apologize, I lost my voice almost earlier this week, which some would say is a good thing. You know me. It got me to be a little quieter, so I've gotten it pretty much back. So I'll give you as much as I can, but I don't sound myself. But I feel awesome to be here with you today as we're coming together to celebrate. Really, any Sabbath day or any day that believers can get together and worship Him in some form is good. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We celebrate these days, or observe these days, but really, when we look in the book of Acts, what should stick out to us more isn't this amazing thing that happened on the day of Shavuot, on the day of Pentecost, or any specific account. It's that from day to day, the believers were getting together with each other, from house to house, and wherever they would meet, to share with each other, and to care for each other, and to break bread with each other, and share the word with each other. I think we get too caught up, I know we do, in days, in feasts, and festivals, and Shabbat, and we forget that really what this is about is the community of believers. It's about people. I have not been known through my life to be that much of a people person. I tend to be an A-type of personality. I'm a get-her-done kind of person. But when you get married, and you have a bunch of children, you start to realize the damage that gets done by that kind of personality. One that is focused on things, one that is focused on tasks, a person who's focused on being right about stuff, of proving who I am, and forgetting about people, forgetting about the people around you. And so today, I have some notes, but I've usually taught with PowerPoints. That's mostly what I've done through the years. But I've come to realize that we have this commandment that when we stand up, especially before not principalities, but those in authority, that we not even think ahead of time about what we're going to say. That we open our mouth and we let the Spirit speak. And when you're a person who likes to teach with PowerPoints, that means if the Spirit's going to speak through you, he, or probably more accurately she, the Spirit, needs to do it at least 48 hours ahead of time before you're going to teach, because you need to write it down, you need to get it into PowerPoint, you need to get the fonts right, you need to find all these great images, right? I mean, can anybody believe that the gospel was ever preached before PowerPoint? I mean, I don't think it actually was. Definitely not in the right way, right? But really, as we get more into the things of the Spirit, and this is where my journey has really been over the past few years. I guess it's been since I became a believer, but really I've been more heady about my faith, about my understanding, about my practice, and ignoring really the things of the Spirit. And I thank as one person who majors on it incredibly, which is Arthur Bailey. He's like one of the voices in the Hebrew Roots movement, who you go to a conference, and the man's brilliant, and he has so much to teach and so much to share, but when he goes to a conference where there are other teachers, he always teaches on the Spirit and how to release the gifts of the Spirit. Why? Because that's been missing from the Hebrew Roots Messianic movement, like completely. And yet, we celebrate things like Shavuot, Pentecost, and yet do we really think about what in the world was that all about? I mean, why was that? Why did that even come to pass? Why was that so important? Why were the disciples to wait in Jerusalem for the Spirit to get sent? And what happened to them? What changed? What shift happened? And how did the church, the body of Messiah, on that day get infused with power that has never been seen before on this earth? Because it wasn't just through a leader. It was through all of those who confessed Yeshua Messiah. And the fact that we still, to this day, don't have a unity of the Spirit, the fact that we still defer most ministry to the professionals, and that, well, let's make it even the most basic thing. Most of us don't even know what our calling is and why we were put here on the planet. Why in the world was the Spirit given at all if we're not really going into those questions and we're still playing Pharisaical religion, just like in Yeshua's day. If Pharisaical Judaism, which is basically the sect of Judaism that survives to this day in modern-day rabbinic Judaism, if that was the ultimate thing, then why did Yeshua have to come at all? And so we need to look within this Messianic Hebrew roots movement, of which I am a part and have been a part for a long time. And so I've seen this movement, maybe not from the beginning. I stand on the shoulders of giants who came out of the late 60s and early 70s, and the Jesus movement, who proclaimed Messianic Judaism as an identity for that Jews could believe in Jesus and still be Jews. And what does that mean? And sort of rediscovering what first century believers were dealing with and what Paul wrestled with and a lot figured out to get back to that. Because when I talked to the quote-unquote old-timers there who were dealing with that, they said, you know what the issue was back then, even in like the 70s? It was proving to the church that Jewish people could believe in Jesus. Like the church had forgotten to the Jew first. They had just forgotten. It had been assumed, and Judaism was all too happy to let it be assumed that Christianity was for everybody but the Jews. And so you just don't evangelize the Jews. You know, enough damage has been done. The Inquisition, the Holocaust, let's back off. Okay? Now, again, those things were not executed well, to say the least. Okay? But the Jews don't believe in Yeshua as Messiah. In the beginning, only Jews believed in Yeshua as the Messiah. When we get to the Jerusalem Council, they're dealing with, you know, can non-Jews believe in Messiah? And yet 2,000 years later, can you believe it? The big issue for Messianic Judaism was just getting the church to flip that switch back and say, yes, Jews can believe. And, by the way, they don't necessarily become Christians. They maintain Jewish identity. And then from that, and I recounted this history if you were with us last time when I taught on post-Messianic, where I believe we're heading into this post-Messianic era, that the Hebrew roots movement was for the most part non-Jews who wanted to keep Torah, actually live a Torah lifestyle, but were, many, rejected by Messianic Judaism, made to feel second-class citizens within it. And after years of wanting acceptance by Big Brother Judah, finally said, you know what, forget it. It's on our heart to go do Torah. We're not going to let you, as a religion, tell us what to do. We're going to go out and do something because this is what's on our heart. And yet that was like 20 years ago that really got stirred up. Where are we today? So I'm calling this Kingdom Sojourns with the Stranger Among You. And I came up with that title because it sounded provoking and interesting and not exactly, you know, completely sure what it means, as many things when they come to me for the first time. And I even realized that just defines basically anything I talk about. Because I'm on my own kingdom sojourn. There's this kingdom, and I've spent very much part of the last 2 years going around the United States just teaching on the kingdom, the kingdom, the kingdom, at a higher level than most anybody talks about, and yet barely scratching the surface. Barely scratching the surface. We've forgotten the kingdom. We've lost the purpose. We've gotten so caught up in the minutia of religion that we're not really acting in the kingdom, working in the kingdom, being good stewards in the kingdom. And so my sojourn into the kingdom is mine, and your sojourn into the kingdom is yours. The kingdom is here. The kingdom is now. The kingdom has been here for 2,000 years. Yeshua brought it. He instituted it. And yet, most people, even with Messianic, speak a language of going to heaven. I'm just waiting, you know, to live a good life on this earth and go to heaven. And kingdom, I even said to someone the other day, that was in Colorado Springs that I met, a good Christian guy. And I said, I teach on the kingdom. He said, oh, you mean heaven? What is that? What is that? Are we going to heaven? Can you show me anywhere in the Bible where it says that we're going to live in heaven. From what I read, the kingdom is here and the kingdom is now, and our citizenship is in heaven, but we're to manifest the kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. And it's not a future event, although the culmination of it, the return of Yeshua, the fully bringing in of the kingdom, absolutely, it's a future event, and may it not be too far in the future. But for 2,000 years, something has been here, and it's been active. And yet we, for the most part, who claim his name, who call Yeshua or Jesus the Messiah, have been passive. And we're supposed to be raging. We're supposed to be storming the gates of hell. For what? For this kingdom. Now that's a daunting task. It's a daunting task. But it shouldn't be. It can be really, really simple. And what I've tried to do, you know, there was this song that was up there that was "Do Something," right? Do something. And funny enough, there's actually a teaching that I do that's called the Narrow Road Challenge, and that I've taught for years. Actually came up mostly by one of my best friends, Dr. Jeff Hazim, who's a chiropractor. He teaches on biblical health. We had a ministry called Biblical Health Television, and he developed this teaching about living a sanctified life. And it really, that whole experience of being in a health ministry opened me up to understand that it's not, you know, just about physical health, or it's really about the whole man. And that this sanctification process that we're going through on a spiritual level, mental and physical level as his children is so important, that we embrace it, that we don't blame other people, that we take responsibility for ourselves completely. And at the end of this Narrow Road Challenge, I tell everybody at the beginning, the challenge will be issued at the end, and I'm sure you can do it. And at the end, after laying out all these different ways that believers could engage personally in order to improve themselves, in order to grow and mature, we say, do something. Do something. Do anything. For God's sakes, do something. Do something. But you know what? When those words go up there, we sing it and do something, but do we really apply it? Because most people, there's about 10% people in the world who are A-type personalities. I happen to be one of them. Not that I don't procrastinate at times, because of also a perfectionist streak that causes procrastination. But basically, I'm the type of person who, if I get something that I'm interested in, I figure out an application for it. I put things in place in order to bring it about. I give myself accountability, and I follow through on it. That's why I was able to drag a wife and 6 children around the United States and always have a place to stay and a place to teach. But most people aren't like that. You know, we don't get that. A-type personality. We can't understand how people are like that, but as you learn to get out of the head and into the heart, you understand that Jehovah made a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, and you know, thank him that everybody's not like me. That would be a horrible place of just go-getting and not relaxing, which I'm trying to learn how to do more. Is that other people here do something and they have a heart to do something, but they don't know where to go from there. They want to be given specifics. They want a plan. They want a coach. They want a mentor. Well, guess what? We're supposed to be discipling each other. There's actually a plan. Can you imagine? Everything has its answers in the Bible. We say that, but do we really look for them there? Discipleship. That we would get involved in each other's life and we would encourage each other in an individual way to walk this word out. But the discipleship is missing. So what do we end up with? We end up with self-help and Christians self-help and books and tapes and DVDs, and we end up with Oprah, and we end up with Tony Robbins, and the thing about those people with their quasi-spiritualness is they are actually, in my opinion, offering more to the soul of an individual, what a soul longs for, than the church comes anywhere close to doing. Because they say, you're special, and you were made for greatness, And let us show you how to, you be you, and you figure it out. You know, you figure it out, and then you be that person. And you know what? Every single one of us wants that. The great existential questions of every philosopher, of every age. Why am I here? What am I doing? What does God or the universe want from me? Right? Like everybody asks those questions. And the church gives no answers except be a good person and you'll go to heaven. And there you'll get your reward. And meanwhile, we know that's not true, because why then are we here? And when you really read the Bible outside of whatever age that added on the, flying around with wings and cherubim and, all these things and cupids and floating away on clouds, if we remove that, we understand that Father Adam was given dominion over this planet. He lost it. And Yeshua gave us what? Dominion back over this planet. This is our place. We rule here now, or we should be. We rule here later. But the kingdom is here. The kingdom is now. And the kingdom is within you. And it's been that way for 2,000 years. And yet, somewhere along the way, we got off track. And we started pursuing things that don't add up to that. And the worst of it is it keeps believers who have just total love for the Father and a heart to serve His kingdom. We're never even told that we have a unique purpose. Never even told. Really. Not the way Oprah and Tony Robbins tell you. The problem with them and the way they teach is they say the giant is within. But we know that it's not us. Okay? We know that it's not us. It's not about praising ourselves. That's what Satanists do. Satanism is about self-worship. But it's the Spirit in us doing its good pleasure. That's the power. That's where we need to be going. Nothing that we accomplish, nothing that I'm doing here, it's not me. I mean, I hope it's not. If it is, flush it. Okay? Flush it. I pray, and this is why I've stopped with the PowerPoints and I haven't even gone to my notes yet. I just wanted the Spirit to speak through me to you individually. It could be a completely different message being received by all of you. I'm fine with that. And not Chaim. I just show up. And He's put things on my heart to share. And it's been good. At least a small group of people on the planet recognize that I have some gifts. And I've been able to pull off, a lifestyle where I get to do this. And it hasn't been easy, but it's been glorious. And so I just want to show up and be that person. I was invited by the Hebrew, Messianic and Hebrew Roots congregations of Southern Colorado. The leaders get together every quarter, and they invited me to teach tomorrow at their Shavuot get-together, festival in the park. And I hope you come out. It's going to be sort of part 2 of this teaching. Although today's will be complete, but it'll be a part 2. And that came out of the blue. I mean, that was really unexpected. And don't tell them, but I think Shavuot's actually next Sunday. Okay? And everybody knows that. That's the calendar that I follow. But I'm not completely sure. I respect the other calendars. I don't think any of us are completely sure. But we got to pick a date. But when they asked me to come, and actually come all the way out from Florida, I didn't say, well, I can't keep it on that day. I mean, if I'm going to celebrate, the Holy Spirit coming on all believers, I'm going to do it right, not like those people are doing, right? I mean, I'm really going to stay in the Spirit and all the self-righteousness that brings, and I'm going to, no. It was like, wow, what an honor. What an honor to get together with believers who are coming together to celebrate the Spirit and the giving of the Spirit. And I think all of us should really get to a place where, my goodness, if we don't have enough in common with other Hebrew Roots Messianic believers, I mean, like, no one else on the planet is even getting any of this stuff, right? They're not even getting it. And yet, maybe a couple 100,000 people on the planet, and I think it's that big, are getting this. They're getting something about the feasts, something about the Torah. They're getting it, something. The Spirit's speaking to them in some way. But as far as numbers on the planet, it's tiny, and we're certainly not organized. You would think that getting together with a person like that would be easy, and yet this movement is known for its divisiveness more than anything else, and we actually have to change that. And we can say, yeah, we're going to do something about it, but what are we going to do about it? And to me, I understand, I can't change systems, but I can help bring His Word to other people and have His Spirit change that individual. And what we learn on Shavuot is 3,000 came to faith, like that. People say, oh, this will never happen. Oh, this is hard. Oh, they're never going to get it. No. The Spirit moves, and in an instant, everybody can get it. I mean, right? So why are we placing human limitations? I don't care what you've seen. Let me ask you. Until that moment, maybe you were one of those people who debated it for a long period of time, but that moment that you accepted Yeshua, or you accepted Jesus in a church somewhere, what were you? Who were you up until like that moment? Okay, you were a person who never would have done it and wanted to have nothing to do with it. Maybe you had been hurt by it, maybe you just thought it was crazy, and then boom, you got a revelation, you made a confession, and something changed. It may have taken quite a while to mature. I've been in this 23 years, and just keeps rolling, okay? And I just pray that He keeps working with me. He says He'll complete this work in me, right? That's my hope, that He'll complete this work, because I know I'm not completed. But something changed that day, and it did in you, and it does in every other person. You think that, the great thing about understanding that this is a kingdom, and that it's not a religion, and that it's a government which has rules, mean that we have rules that apply the same to everybody. It's not religion where things are different and people are making stuff up every day depending on their whims. It's written, and He doesn't change. And so how it happened to you, it'll happen to other people. And it can be that quick. In His timing and in our patience. But all we need to do to work for the kingdom is to find out what we need to do. That's it. You don't need to worry about what Chaim has to worry about. You just need to worry about, and I use that word worry, and probably we shouldn't worry, but that we need to be concerned that we're going out there and doing what we're called to do. And if you do that, well done, my good and faithful servant. A master doesn't expect this servant who was assigned that task to do that task. And so don't feel the whole weight of the world on your shoulders, but feel the whole weight of the world on your shoulders. Because you were called into the kingdom for such a time as this, and you have a purpose, and you have a calling. And you need to find out, that's not what this is about, I teach this in other teachings, but this is really the simplicity of this. He brought you here. I feel that with Israel turning 70, although that seemed to have escaped the newspapers, the day after Israel turned 70 and the U.S. opened its embassy in Jerusalem, do you know what the headlines were? I saw the headline. I was actually flying out here the next day, and so I got to see the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. Okay, Israel, this amazing, plucky little country that 70 years ago people were celebrating, and in 1967, wow. Now Israel turned 70. The Palestinians, because they know how to work the media, and the media is only too willing, bring a whole bunch of people up to the border and say, we're going to have a peaceful protest. And then, jihadist militants run at the border, okay, to cross the border, okay, and lob things under and everything. What's a sovereign nation to do when they're trying to be invaded and destroyed by another country? What is it to do? If Canada, threw a Molotov cocktail over the border, tanks from the United States would roll into Toronto in about 5 minutes, okay? But Israel has has violent, dangerous individuals trying to cross the border, and Israeli police and the army decided they had to shoot them. I mean, which is what you do when violent people are coming into your home, right? Or anywhere, okay? They didn't want to, but they were forced to. And so what are the headlines the following day? Israelis kill 100 Palestinians as U.S. Embassy opens in Jerusalem. That's the headline. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, like to a newspaper. Now, is that a story? Sure, granted it's a story. But how about another story also on the front page? Israel turned 70. You know, this amazing country after 70 years, like nothing. Nothing. And so what we need to realize, and I'm a dual citizen of Israel, my family are too, we lived there for 9 years, is you get to the point where you keep fighting the fight, but you realize, I don't care. The world's going to keep being that way. The fact that all the media is so willing to pick up that narrative and ignore a completely valid story that should have also been on the front page. We know this is what we're looking at. We know this is what's going on. And there's really nothing in the physical realm we can do about it. We can certainly pray. But what we can do is, and this is a lesson for all of us, we can keep being the person that we're supposed to be. In the middle of all of this, Israel for 70 years, coming out of the Holocaust, I mean, if you think about that, where Israel came from, complete, basically defeated annihilation, becomes a country that in the midst of not being the only country on the planet not allowed to protect its sovereignty, and the only one that isn't allowed to say where its capital is, except the United States, after 23 years of a law being on the books, is finally walking into it. Israelis have decided, you know what, we're going to defend our country no matter what anybody thinks. And we're going to keep being a light to the nations that we were called to be. And we're going to keep doing our thing. We're going to keep advancing in technology and the arts and everything else. And we're going to bless the world because it's who we are. And even if Israelis aren't thinking about the rest of the world, they're just saying, I'm not going to let the world tell me who I am. I know who I am. And so Israelis just keep fighting and keep living. Christians, on the other hand, top line, evangelical Christians, Messianic, on-fire believers, we walk around defeated all the time. There's a huge poverty mentality that's over this movement. That's horrible. It's not kingdom. Okay, there is really a divisiveness and even a hatred toward each other. You know, we create denominations of one in this movement. If you don't agree with me and everything that I believe, I can't even fellowship with you. And it's horrible. And on and on and on. We are not the powerful people that we are called to be. And now I want to explain that and give you some perspective on that and hopefully free you from it, because I can't change a system, but I can bring words that will heal a human being and will cause that human being to then not need me, I'm just a messenger, but to seek him and to really become who it is that you're called to be. But I wanted to mention the Parsha today, Bamidbar, the first chapters of or Numbers, right? Numbers. Bamidbar, the wilderness. And it opens up with Israel, of course, being in the wilderness and taking a census. Will you be counted? Are you numbered among Israel? Are you numbered? If somebody says, hey, who are the believers out there who are actually doing something? Is your name there? Are you walking in this? Because the Father called us to take a census. Interestingly, the Levites were separate. The Levites are done differently. They weren't in the original, but then they were numbered and they were registered, and the different tribes of the Levites are discussed there. And one of the tribes, I believe it was the first son of Levi, is Gershom. And Gershom basically means a stranger, a wanderer, a sojourner. And the Gershonites were actually given part of the temple service, not like Aaron's sons did, to actually go into the Holy of Holies, but they were the ones who were taking care of like the walls and the outer areas, the construct around it. They were given a role. All of the tribe was, because They were not given a portion in Israel, and they were not allowed to redeem their sons like the other Israelites were, but they were fully in the service of Yehovah. We also have Moses, with this Gershom. Moses names one of his sons Gershom, because he says, I was a stranger in a foreign land. And so this Gershom of being a sojourner, being a stranger, to remember that we were strangers is really, really important. And Moses, even within the Levites, we have someone who is named to remind us of the strangers. And we have Moses reminding himself that he was a stranger, because how we treat the stranger is very, very important to Yehovah, exceedingly important. And there are many verses on it that you can look up. I have a bunch of them here, but in Exodus 22, 21 and 22, it says, "You shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. You shall not mistreat any widow or fatherless child." Exodus 23:9, "You shall not oppress a sojourner. You know the heart of a sojourner, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt." Leviticus 19:33 and 34, "When a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers, sojourners, Gerim, in the land of Egypt. I am Yehovah, your Elohim." And you can look these up, and they go on. And we even have Yeshua in Matthew 25 saying, I was a stranger and you didn't take care of me. I was a stranger and you did take care of me. And he said, when were you a stranger among us and we didn't take care of you, or we did take care of you? And he said, what you do to the least of these, you do unto me. We need to remember, where we were 5 minutes ago. It's so easy to say, those people in that church, they don't get it. Wait a minute, weren't you there? Weren't you sitting in those seats and not getting it too? Weren't you a stranger in a strange land? And if we get that and we understand that, then how much more so should we be treating other believers? And yet, we're like, we kill our young in this movement in a lot of ways. We go heaven and earth to make one proselyte, and then what do? We beat them up. We don't understand the sanctification process. We don't understand the process that we ourselves go through. Hold yourself first to any standard that you want to enact on another person. See if you stack up. Because what I find in this movement, and again, I hope, I'm speaking a hard word, but it's a message of hope if you grasp onto it. And I don't come here to insult or bring anybody down, but we have to inspect ourselves to see what's going on in here. I was, talked about, I was watching a teaching not too long ago. Mason Clover, if people know him, he gets this stuff big time, and he teaches this stuff about the movement. And saying, most people in this movement are walking around pretty much just as broken in a bad way as they were the day they got saved. The healing has never really come. The acceptance has never really come. The purpose has never really come. We talk a good game about Yeshua, but we don't know him. We don't really know him. And so before you're going to enact or teach anybody, deal with this yourself. Inspect yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror. Okay? Now here's the bad news. You're filthy rags. You're absolutely worthless. You're refuse. By yourself. In him, forget about it. You're everything. You're a complete overcomer. You're perfect. And you're a good and faithful servant. But when we start to think that we're all that we somehow brought this revelation to ourselves, and we somehow brought this salvation to ourselves, and let's be honest about it. Some days we might think, well, when I became a believer, I wasn't that bad. There were other people. They really needed Jesus. Me, let's be honest. okay? Even on our best days, we have thoughts like that. I'm not that bad. Yes, you are. And if you remove the Spirit from you for a moment, you would go right back to the refuse pile where you came from. And so would I. Absolutely. If we don't get that, then we think we're Him. Okay? We're not Him. And yet, He calls us to become like Him. To become holy. To be righteous. To have the same mind that was in Messiah. We're actually called to that level. And yet, we're still in this human body. We have to overcome this flesh, just like Yeshua did, in order to get there. This is the real deal. It's so simple, but it's so not easy. Okay? Because what this involves is a death. Yours. We must die, right? It's like a seed has to go into the ground. We have to lose our life in order to gain it. That is the teaching of this faith that we proclaim. And yet, nobody really wants to do it. Even Yeshua. I mean, can you believe it? Father, please take this cup from me. Please. Yeshua was a human being. That cross thing isn't looking that great, that easy. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. And so we have to go through this continuation of this continual process of the breaking of our will, the losing of our will, knowing that He doesn't have any obligation really, because of our sins, to forgive us, atone for us, to make us whole, or give us anything, because if left to the judgment that all of us deserve, it's the pit. And yet, He does promise us that He will stand for us, He will atone for us, and He will lift us up. But He expects something. Okay? Even though the gift is free, and the choice wasn't yours, you were chosen. It wasn't yours. That's a whole complicated thing we can discuss another time. Okay? If it was your choice, you wouldn't have made it. Let's face it, we were deprived. Who would choose, what unholy person, which is everybody, would choose a holy God? Nobody. So it was Him and His Spirit infused into our life that caused us to make this decision. But once we become His, now it's different. Now we're sons. Okay? We're citizens of the kingdom. We need to be good citizens. We're sons and daughters of the King. We have a responsibility to represent this kingdom properly, because the world will understand the kingdom only by looking at kingdom citizens. And the world can't see the spiritual realm. The gospel is foolishness to those who are perishing. But we can see this. They see us. Yeshua said, you want to see the Father? Look at me. If you see me, you've seen the Father. I boldly state, when people look at us, they should see the Father. They should see Yeshua. Paul said, you would do well to follow me inasmuch as I follow Messiah. And so inasmuch as any one of us follow Messiah, people would do well to follow us. But we have a fear and a contempt for the stranger. We don't like things that we don't know. It's very easy for us to judge people and situations and denominations of Christianity, and even things we call cults. We judge them, but we've really never done any time researching them, and especially we haven't spent time sitting down with people who believe in those things and really talking to them, human being to human being. And I do that. I'm very strong in the things I believe, and I also know that I don't know a lot of stuff. And you don't know what you don't know. So in listening to other people, having understanding and compassion for other people, and not having to be right, which is so hard for me, especially with my children. It's very hard for me. But not needing to be right. Like there's a maxim for marriage, you know, you want to be right or you want to be happy. right? Marriage teaches us more about sanctification than anything, because your spouse knows exactly how to push those buttons. Praise Jehovah. Perfectly designed to sanctify you and challenge you to your core all the time. Okay? And that's just part of it. And we just have to say hallelujah to that. But we fear what we don't know. And I've learned, what have I been doing the past couple of months? The plan was to move to Colorado Springs. And it's still the plan, because absolutely this is where we're called to be. And yet the Father, sometimes the timeline you think isn't the timeline He has for you. And 5 days after we got to Colorado Springs, this was back in March, end of February, my wife's mother in Miami had a stroke. My wife immediately flew back. I was teaching a conference here, and right after that was done, I left with the 6 children, 2,000 miles with the van and the trailer in 2.5 days back to there, because we didn't know, if she was going to pass away and when that would be, and we wanted to get there. And she ended up passing away about 5 days after we got back. And it's been somewhat of a tumultuous time ever since, because there's an estate and she had properties, but they aren't exactly that simple. And so we're in probate, which is, forget about it, and Miami is supposed to be like the worst probate in the nation. It's just, and yet all the lawyers involved, and there are lawyers involved, because there have to be, are telling us we've never seen anything move this quickly through Miami probate, because we have favor and we pray for it, and that's the way it should be, right? And yet there's a reason why the Father sent us back, okay? And we have faith in that. It was said to me by someone who's become a mentor, an older man here, who said, you have dragons to slay back in Miami. And I said, oh man, I don't want to hear that, because my wife's from Miami. We spent a lot of time there. We felt trapped there, like getting out of there was really hard. And our plan at the end of our 2017 tour was to go back to Miami, and we decided, why are we going back to Miami? We don't want to be there, and then we just skipped it. We tried to run from it. The family issues and everything else, we tried to run away from it. And the Father, being a great Father, said, no, you're going back. And so we're getting an amazing education, and I think within 6 months, I will know more about real estate, probate, and all this stuff than most people in real estate ever learn. And so he's obviously preparing for something, because guess what? The kingdom is about a piece of real estate. Adam was given a piece of real estate to manage. It's all about, before he was given a wife, he was made a property manager. And if we are actually if we have a kingdom mindset toward this world, we will be property owners, not just for ourselves, but actually helping other people get into homes, and people forming communities and helping communities. This is what, we're allured. The only thing left in the English, in the American language, to represent what lordship is, which is a key kingdom principle, is a landlord. And if you're a landlord, you actually, and we've already found that out, there are properties with people in them, and we're immediately walk in there with authority and get to minister to them. There were people that hadn't paid the rent. I took money out of my pocket because they didn't have food. Okay, it's not a good way to run a business, and we're trying to be better business people. But at least in the short term, establishing a relationship and helping people out, is these people in these buildings immediately came under our care. Immediately. And we had to start thinking to ourselves, okay, we've never been landlords. I've never owned, my wife's never owned a piece of property, ever. And suddenly, we have to think about, how do we represent the kingdom in this new role? What does it mean? How do we get a good reputation in real estate? We have an opportunity to establish a reputation from scratch. We have no good or bad reputation in this area. And I said to my wife, how does a person who wants to represent the kingdom in real estate, how would they act? How would we deal with difficulties? How would we deal with people? How would we deal with people who aren't paying rent or causing a problem? You can't just let it go. My mother-in-law was really nice and let people stay there and ran a lot of things into the ground. We're dealing with big issues, because guess what? If you don't collect rent, you can't fix a roof, right? I mean, it's a business. And so I've been learning from kingdom people who do this, that there's a transactional side of our faith, and there's a relational side of our faith, and we can't get them confused. We need to care for people, but we also need to conduct proper stewardship of the things that the Father has given us. And we need to do that, whatever those resources are. So we've been back there dealing with that, trying to make a lot of tough decisions, and also trying to set things up here, which I'll talk about at the end. And this has really changed us, my wife and I. It's made our marriage better. We're working together on this thing, which is fantastic. But we're having to discuss things on a daily basis about buildings, about people, about legal decisions, about money, about what her mother's intent was and what her mother would want, and yet her mother made mistakes, and we don't want to repeat these mistakes. And my wife, she's an only child, her father's still alive, he's not a believer, but her mother was a believer, Jewish believer, is being challenged with mourning and also seeing all the issues that her mother, in the way her mother made choices to conduct herself, cause issues, cause problems. And how do we as grown children look toward parents for lessons even when we see that things that they did cause problems and aren't necessarily the way that we want to live our life, and yet we're called to honor them? Well, guess what? We are standing on the shoulders, we are ancestors of the faith, of those who have come before us in Christianity, in Judaism. And those people made choices along the way. And I believe most of them were well-intended, maybe not well-advised, but hindsight is 20/20. We're able to look back at these Christian denominations and say, look at how they mess things up. Look at the lies, look at the problems. I mean, just look at the Inquisition. What was that all about? Let's torture people to get them to accept Jesus. And yet, in their generation, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, they thought it right. They made decisions. As Arthur Bailey likes to say, that the Bible was lived out in real time. We have to remember, it was not this, like people having a 2,000-year revelation where 3,500 we get to look back on. These were individual people that we read about living their life and having to make decisions day by day, and then we hear about this much of their life when they made some major decision, major impact. But most of their lives were lived as we do. They got up in the morning, they had to take care of the animals, they had children, they had wives, they had bills to pay, and they lived things out just like we do. And yet we look back in 2020 and inspect them like they should have known better, and yet we don't inspect ourselves. And guess what? We can't change anything that they did. What is it that we can change? What we do, individually. It's all we have control over. So worrying about that past stuff, maybe you can learn some lessons from it, but really where we need to be focused is not looking back, right? We're not supposed to look back or to the side. We're to keep our eyes forward. And if we do that, and we focus on our own sanctification process, and we focus on, why am I here? Forget about why he's here, or what my pastor said, or what that movement is, or what the right dates on the calendar are, or any of that. What am I supposed to do? That's it. By the way, it's really hard because it's so much easier to point the finger. It's so much easier to blame everybody, the economy, the liberals, the conservatives, the IRS, our parents. It's so easy to place the blame on others, and yet there's no anointing in it. In Isaiah 58, from where we get repairing the breach from, it says that one of the part of this pattern of getting the full favor of Yehovah and having him hear you and really being someone who does big things in the kingdom, it says you must take away the pointing of the finger. It says it in Isaiah 58, like verse 8 or 9 or something like that. You must take away the pointing of the finger unless you want to point it back at you. Now the great thing is, he's forgiven your sins. And he's saying, let's go farther. Like, don't get, you're going to condemn yourself. There's no condemnation in Messiah Yeshua. Are you feeling condemned for the past fill in the blank number of years of your life? Oh, that's a trick too. That is pride. Okay, that is self-serving, and it's self-worship. So what that you did this, that, or whatever? He can work all things for good for those who love him. and according to his purpose. So are you going to languish in some kind of self-hatred or some kind of pity? That's not the kingdom. Forget about it. He allowed you to come to this point in your life. What are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? That's it. What are you going to do now? He is outside of time. Did he know everything that you were ever going to do in your life, both before and after you were saved? Did he know that you were going to proclaim his name and still do stupid stuff? Did he? Did he? Yes? Yeah. But he chose you anyway? Knowing that you're going to proclaim his name, go out, call yourself a Christian or a Messianic, and still do stupid stuff. And he chose you anyway. What does that mean? What does that mean? Come on. This isn't church. Speak up. What does it mean?
He's faithful.
He's faithful. What else?
He has faith in you.
He has faith in you. He loves you.
Exactly.
He called you. And he knows, just like any good father, okay, that was stupid. Get up. Stop crying. Stop throwing a fit. Get up. We got places to go.
And things to do.
And things to do. And yet we can't decide what other people's places to go and things to do are. And that's where we get in a real problem mode. You know, there was a great, I'll use the, can I erase it? If we're all going here, okay, this is Yeshua, we're being conformed into the image of Yeshua. And I start over here, and you start over here, and we're all heading to him. Okay? And I look over at you, heading this way, and I'm going this way. I'm going to say, hey, buddy, you're going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way. Because I'm looking at your life. And you're supposed to be going this way, just like me. Clearly, you can't be serving God. Clearly, you're off base. Clearly, you have no idea what you're doing. Your understanding of the scriptures is way off. You're probably still keeping Christmas and Easter, aren't you? As I can tell, because I looked over at you. And clearly, if you knew what you were doing, and you were really heading toward being like Messiah, you would be heading this way. Let's face it, that's what we're saying. And yet, have you walked even a minute, much less a mile, in that person's shoes? Do you know where they came from? You know? Let's say that person with the Christmas tree last week was a Satanist sacrificing children in the backwoods. And there are people doing that. Man, I can't believe you're keeping Christmas. For real? And by the way, you know, not that it should, but that sends a lot of people back to the woods. Because they come into this faith. And we show all this love and all this compassion for them when they're outside of the faith. But once we bring them inside, we beat them to shreds. Because you have to conform to whatever. Our religion, our doctrines, our teaching. And yet Tony Robbins and Oprah are saying, you be you. You be you. You be you. And you know what the Father's saying to all of us? You be you. Okay, but in me. You be you. But there's boundaries to the you being you. Okay? You have you know, we're given like, you know, physical sexual desires. Marriage. Marriage. Okay, there's boundaries to this thing. Not with everybody. Love the one you're with. That's not, you know, it's not in the Bible. Okay? We're allowed to have these passions. In fact, he put them in us. The desires that you have. This is when I teach, when I coach. What is it you want to be? What is it you want to do? David told Jehovah that he would build him a house. Jehovah never asked David to build him a house. David told Jehovah, I'm going to build you a house. And Jehovah looked at him and said, I like that. I like what's on your heart. The only thing is you have too much blood on your hands. Your son's going to do this. But it's going to be done. And your vision is going to come to pass as you said. I never asked you to do it. But you knew you had my mind. You had my heart. You knew that I wanted a house. Your palace is beautiful. You've been building yourself a palace. I'm still in a tabernacle? What am I? Chopped liver? Come on, build me a house. But he never asked for it. But David knew. What is it you know? What is it that you know you're supposed to be doing? What is it you know that this planet needs? Are you waiting for permission? From whom? Who are you waiting for permission from? Some kind of religious leader? Your wife? Your boss? What are you waiting for? The creator of the universe is calling you to do something?
Can I
Yes.
answer that for you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, when I took an oath and got baptized many, many years ago, my responsibility was to go out and make disciples
Okay.
of people.
Absolutely.
And continue doing that. And I've been doing that all my life. And I'm still doing it now. That is my responsibility.
Awesome.
I
Fantastic.
took that already because I took the oath to Jehovah God, to Jesus Christ. So I know, see, nobody needs to tell me that I have responsibility. I already know in my heart, at my age, that I am responsible for my actions. I have to save as many people as we can before Armageddon comes,
Amen.
or before Jesus comes. And I took that seriously. It took me 7 years to find this congregation. But I prayed to my Heavenly Father, to Jesus, every night, and I searched until I finally ran into my friend here, Jeff, by mistake in the Yellow Book pages.
No mistakes.
Looking for a truck to have painted, and I ran into his congregation.
No mistakes.
And that opened the doors for me. And I am so happy to be here.
Hallelujah.
I am,
Well, let's talk
I am the
about
top of the world.
let's talk about discipleship. Everyone in this room is called to disciple. Okay? Period. End of story. Now, how we disciple, who we disciple, that is individual. Because, you know, Yeshua only had 12, right? I mean, he had the masses, but he had 12 about, right? That were his closest disciples. That's a lot. Try to disciple, you know, one person, 2 people. But what does it mean to disciple a person? It really means to be involved in their life. It's not teaching. Anybody can teach. Paul, forgetting what the verse talked about, even at the time he said you have 10,000 teachers, but there are very few who are actually spending time with you, you know, that are actually being your fathers. We need to find the exact people who are fit for us to disciple. But guess what? If we don't know who we are, and we don't know what our gifts are, and we're not exercising them, then how are we going to disciple anybody? And how are we going to know the right person to disciple? Because that person needs to be raised up to be themselves, not to be mini-me's, right? It's not about making a miniature version of yourself. But there are certain giftings and certain life experiences and certain ways that certain people will learn from better than others. And also, you need to be willing to get in a relationship. Discipleship, again, I've heard there are these things out there that people put out called discipleship training programs. They're not discipleship. You can't have discipleship as a one-way conversation over the internet through a video or a series of videos, even hundreds of videos. That is not discipleship. Discipleship is sitting down with a person and saying, "What's up?" And then ministering to that person, challenging that person, putting assignments in front of that person and keeping that person accountable to them. It's what we do with children, or we should do with children. If more of us did, this world would be a better place. But if we walk in this way, and I do this with my children. Now my eldest just turned 15, so I actually have like a young adult in the house. Like, this is the first thing for us, and we're seeing him shift from a childish mindset to a more mature mindset in the things that he's deciding to engage with. And this is someone who, as my oldest, you know, I discipling him and bringing him in, but we have somewhat different personalities, but he's my son, so I'm figuring it out, and I'm working it out. You know, the oldest gets the brunt, right, of all the trial and error. But I need to understand him as a child. And I speak to him, and I say, very often, I say, the things I'm sharing with you are well beyond your years. It took me 50 plus years to understand these things. And you probably won't grasp them, and you probably in some of these things won't take my advice, and you'll end up having to go prove it out to yourself. But I'm going to share it with you anyway, and I'm going to share it with you in a way that hopefully at your age you can comprehend and understand. And as we're discipling other people, even if we're discipling adults, even if we're discipling people who are older than we are, if we're in a discipleship relationship, we need to think, this person in the area that I'm ministering to him in is a child. And children need to be taught in a certain way. They need to be given assignments. They need to be held accountable. And guess what? All of us do that, okay? The speed limit on the road, okay? If it was never enforced, how fast would everybody be driving? Okay, let's face it. As adults, we do the same stuff that children do. What can we get away with? How can we get away with it? We still do the same stupid stuff. But as we mature, and we realize that there's no fruit in it, and that we need to become mature believers, we start putting away those childish things. And we start governing ourselves not by outside people, but through the Spirit. And when that happens, really special stuff goes on. And each of us here has experienced it to some level, and there's other levels that we haven't even scratched the surface and touched it. And generally the places we have touched are the places we give testimony about, and the other things we don't talk about, right? We just, how you doing? Okay. Struggling over anything? No, I'm cool. But we don't want to. And it's very easy in this society to hide out. Because people see you on Shabbat for a couple hours, or they'll see you in the supermarket, or they see you at your desk at work, and we're not really in relationship with people. When you're in a relationship with someone and you're having a problem, do they know? Right? Do they even have to ask? They go, okay, something's up, tell me. What's going on? You know, is that, you still having that XYZ? Because we talked about this before, like I want to know, are you still going through that? That's discipleship. Being in people's lives. And if you roll the numbers, I rolled the numbers, if each one of us would disciple one person, just one, a year, bring someone into your life, pour into them, you're not perfect, they're not perfect, but you're a little bit more down the road than they are. If we did that for a year, and then at the end of the year we found someone and that person found someone, in something like 45 years or 50 years, we would reach the planet, 8 billion people. Doubling, the power of doubling. If we would do 2 people a year, which can you get in a relationship with 2 people a year, it'd be like 15, 20 years. We would reach the planet just by doubling 1 to 2, and then 2 to 4, and 4 to 8. And how cool is it? You get to spend time pouring your life into someone, learning from someone. By the way, you'll never be more convicted to do what you know is true when you're teaching it to someone else. You give someone advice from the Bible and you go, man, I better keep that now. I better do that thing. That's really good advice, and my integrity's at stake. You will never ever, you'll never ever know it until you teach. So, I want to do a little exercise now. Where's the eraser? I want you to call out different denominations of Christianity, or even what we might call cults. Catholic.
I'm an ex-Catholic.
Catholic, Seventh Day.
Methodist.
Pentecostal, charismatic.
Pentecostal.
Baptist.
Catholic.
You said Catholic already.
Oh, we
Baptist.
did. Baptist.
Jehovah's Witness.
Baptist. Ah, we're getting into the cults now.
Lutheran. We're still in the cold.
Still in the cult. Is it JW? JW, Baptist. Oh no, what did you say, Nev?
Lutheran.
Lutheran.
Mormon.
Mormon. Okay, let's stop there. Okay. Can you identify, okay, we love to talk about how they got things wrong. Let's do a little exercise. Because you know, if we're going to have compassion, you need to understand that other people are other people. What is something that the Catholics did right?
Jesus.
Well, I think all of them.
No, they're very
Great
pro-life.
outreach.
What?
They're very pro-life.
Pro-life.
Yes.
What else?
Outreach.
Outreach.
They evangelized the world back in the day.
Missions.
Outreach. Missions. Okay. Let's get more basic to when Catholicism was new. Basically new. What did they do?
Evangelized.
Responsible for the Bible.
How about the biblical canon?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Is that C-A-N-O-N? C-A-N-O-N. The biblical canon. The Bible, other than the Apocrypha, which we, some have removed, but the original King James had it in it, right? So, the biblical canon. Seventh-day Adventists. This should be easy. What did they bring us? Sabbath, right? They recognized the Sabbath inside of Christianity. What else? What else have they done?
Diet.
Diet, right? Health, right? They're huge on the health. Ellen G. White, huge on health. In Loma Linda, California, which is like the biggest enclave of Seventh-day Adventists, they're not everyone, but just the fact that they're in there, I think it's the city or the county, they live 10 years longer than the average lifespan of an American. So how much longer do the Seventh-day Adventists live if they're skewing the numbers that big? Why? Because they've taught biblical health. Most of them are vegetarians. The Methodists, what did they bring? Do we even know? Methods, right? Methods. We love methods, right? Right? We in the Messianic movement, we like patterns and methods and all kinds of stuff. The Pentecostals, Holy Spirit, right? Ruach.
Well, which one?
Okay, but still celebrating it in the gifts, right? Saying, you know what? The Spirit is for today and the gifts are for today. Because a lot of denominations have said, nope, it's all done. Baptists, immersion, right? That's an easy one.
Teaching.
Mikvah,
Yeah, study. Big on study.
okay. Jehovah's Witnesses, the big cult that everybody, come on. I mean, props to them, come on.
Not taking
What are they-
blood.
What?
Not,
How about the name? Okay, did they get rid
Kingdom
of
Hall.
Kingdom Hall, right? Kingdom.
They
They
don't-
call their meeting places Kingdom Hall.
They don't do Christmas.
Okay, they don't do what? Yes.
no blood transfusions.
No blood transfusions. Okay, I don't know.
They're very
Not them.
relational.
Okay.
My mom's.
How about evangelism? Have you ever had them show up on your front step? They tend to come on
Like I said,
Saturdays, right?
Family.
Okay, evangelism.
Family.
Guess what? Maybe you don't know this. No Christmas and Easter.
Or birthdays.
Birthdays.
Easter or birthdays. Or birthdays. I mean, come on now. I mean, that's pretty significant. These are things that we think are good, are big, right? Especially with sacred name and everything. Lutherans, I mean, the whole Reformation, right?
Beer gardens?
Okay. What about the Mormons?
Holy, you missed that. Beer gardens.
What?
Lutherans are beer gardens.
Yeah.
Oh, beer gardens? Okay. Mormon?
Family.
Family. How about business? Entrepreneurial?
Genealogy.
And definitely evangelism, right? Okay. Family. Okay. We could go on and on and on. Now, if you go into any one of these and start telling them what they've done wrong, they'll start telling you what they did right. Okay, and therein lies the conflict where we're not really getting along with people and we're being divisive. And by the way, you may not have realized this, but if you're talking to someone who's some Christian denomination and you start telling them that it's wrong and the things they're doing is wrong and their denomination is wrong, obviously they feel insulted. And when people feel insulted, they get upset and they fight back. But what you're also doing is what happens if, oh, let's just say their parents were Methodist, and their grandparents were Methodist, and their great-grandparents were Methodist. Who are you insulting?
And the like.
Their entire family line. And you start insulting my grandmother, I'm not really going to be listening too much to you. But we're doing it for righteousness' sake. Yeah, how's that working for you?
It's not,
Okay?
that's why not soul winning.
Right, exactly. You start telling a person, and this is no joke, I've heard it many times, that those people on December 25th are worshiping trees. Okay, so now a person hears that and goes, so you're telling me that my grandmother, who's been the most faithful person I know, she gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, prays, she's always served the church, on and on, you're telling me that my grandmother is actually a Celtic, Druid tree worshiper. That's what you're telling me. And I'm going to take you seriously and listen to anything else that you have to say. No. And it's not working. And again, I'm not even talking about soul winning. I'm talking about being in community with other believers. I'm not even talking about the world. I'm talking about people who are born again, Yeshua/Jesus professing Christians with fruit to show that they actually are. And you're telling them, well, you don't keep the seventh day as a Sabbath, or you eat pork, and therefore you're not really a believer in Jesus. You're outside of this. We're taking people who have a profession of Yeshua, and that is what, Peter, his profession was good enough for Yeshua. You're the Messiah, the Son of the living God. He said, flesh and blood hasn't witnessed this to you, Peter. The Spirit did that. And Yeshua was pleased with that revelation. And yet we're not, because we need people to have a profession of Yeshua and agree with us, with our mission statement, with our statement of faith, with our 14 points of whatever, or we won't even get in the same room with them. That is not why the Spirit was given. And if those people don't have the Spirit, and you do, then just consider them children and minister to them. Okay? If you're all that and they're not, guess whose job it is to be more mature? Guess whose job it is to find unity? Guess whose job it is, just like an adult teaching a child, you need to figure out how to properly communicate with this person. And telling them that their grandmother got it wrong is not a good relational starting point. Okay, so what is? I believe very strongly that every single one of these denominations started as a move of Yehovah, a revelation of Yehovah. Every single one. I mean, my goodness, if you want to see, like, the Jerusalem temple service today, like you want to see it enacted, you don't go to a Jewish synagogue. You go where? To a Catholic mass. Incense, priests, showbread. I mean, come on. They kept that. Judaism, it's gone. It's gone. So every one of these got a revelation. I mean, if we don't think that the Catholic Church at one point had the Holy Spirit, and maybe, people, individuals to this day, but I'm talking about as a movement, why are we accepting the books of the Bible that we do, and the ones that they threw out, we don't look at? Like, obviously we're giving them authority. We must trust them pretty inherently, because we hold up the Bible and say, we believe in this. And on and on. This is out of timeline order, but, the Seventh-day Adventists, at their time, it was time for the Sabbath to come back. And so their generation, their movement recognized it. And the Methodists and the Pentecostals and the Baptists and the Jehovah's Witnesses. But somewhere along the line they went astray. How did they go astray? Every single one. It's the same pattern. How did they go astray?
Religion.
Religion. That's the quick answer, but explain that.
Stop focusing on the heart They
Okay.
developed man-made rules that superseded.
Okay, yes. But something, I would say something happened before that, before they authorized themselves to make those rules.
Well, okay, what I've
Ego got
heard,
in the way.
What?
somebody talking?
Oh,
Okay, what I've heard over the years, that the priests don't teach the Christians or the Catholics. They only take them so far into learning about the Bible scriptures. They don't encourage them to read the Bible. They only allow them to go so far. And also, too, they don't teach them what they're supposed to be teaching them. Also, too, I've heard that the Catholics wrote the Bible. A lady told me that they believe that the Catholic
but
wrote the Bible.
but my question isn't about any specific denomination, it's about what did every single one of these denominations do that caused us to be sitting here now going, they got it wrong, they got it wrong, they got it wrong.
I don't know, they didn't get the world out? I mean,
But somebody said it here in the back.
They took their eyes off of the Torah.
Right? Well, they didn't even have their eyes on the Torah because that wasn't their revelation. What?
Their ego got in the way.
Their ego, their pride. You know what every one of them said?
We're right.
God has given us a revelation in this day.
Right.
And it's superior to all the other previous revelation.
We have the truth.
And it's the last one. We're all that. We got it. And then what happened? And they were right. In their generation, they got a revelation and they ran with it. And that's powerful. Really, really powerful. And then the cloud got up to move, and they said, no, we think we'll stay right here. And every one of these had, and still has, a deep, amazing revelation from Yehovah, except they turned it into idolatry. They took that revelation and they made it an idol, and they started worshiping it. So, of course, baptism is the best. Although I heard, I don't know, you tell me this true, that the Pentecostals actually don't really honor Pentecost? Somebody told me that the other day, that it's not like a big thing in the Pentecostal church. I was thinking, how crazy is that? That's what they're named after. It's the very thing they're named after. They really went astray. I mean, if you can't even, I mean, at least they really, the universal church, baby. I mean, they got the Vatican and everything. They really went for it, okay? They got their own, like, property and nation. They own, between, it's either McDonald's or the Vatican who owns more property at any given time on the planet. They're the top landowners. So they got a revelation, and then they turned it into an idol. And then when the cloud moved, they did everything to institutionalize and hold on to it. And everyone made this mistake. And you know who made it in our generation? Messianic Judaism. Messianic Judaism got an amazing, amazing revelation. And then they feared the stranger, and they didn't treat them properly. And so that movement, the entire Messianic Jewish movement, has been handicapped by becoming a religion that keeps Jewish festivals and on and on. And I'm not saying one person. I'm talking about an organization. I'm talking about a movement. I'm making a gross generalization, but this is the deal, and I've been in it, is the Spirit moved. And there were people in their midst who said, I want to grab a hold of the hem of your garment, and I want to be discipled by you, and I want you to teach me, and I want to be part of this. And in our Jewish pride, we said, back of the bus. You can go the same place, but it's going to be in the back of the bus. And as much as when I bring this up in Messianic Jewish circles, they protest, I say, look, go out and talk to the people. I traveled the whole country, and everybody got hurt. Pretty much everybody that's been through Messianic Judaism has gotten hurt by it. So you can proclaim that you didn't mean it, but your actions testify. A tree is known by its fruit, not by its words, because trees don't talk. Okay? So, interesting. And this is only to boast in Yehovah. I flew in a couple days ago, and I'm on the shuttle going from the terminal to my car rental. And at the next terminal, the bus was pretty full, and actually, a guy next to me gave up his seat for this woman who had a baby and in a carrier. And I'm thinking, okay, just want to make sure I'm not sitting here while some other woman with a baby is here. But this older man gets into the bus. It's probably late 60s, early 70s. And he stood right there holding on to the baggage carrier, and I just stood up and I said to him, "Would you like to sit down?" And he said to me with a British accent, because he was from England, he said, "No, thank you, it's better for me to stand." I said, "Okay." And I sat back down. He said, in Europe, nobody offers you a seat. And I just heard this, my good friend Jeff Azim is over in Europe now, he's in England, he said, Europeans are 10 times ruder than Americans. And yet, in America, who does this? Who holds doors anymore? And he actually, from just doing that, we started getting in a conversation while we were riding the bus. And I was saying, well, I opened doors for women and stuff. He said, yeah, but they wanted equal rights, so why are we opening doors for them? It's like, well, that's true. It should backfire on them, shouldn't it? If they want to be equal, why do they get special treatment, right? So, and so we get in this conversation, and I said to him, after a couple minutes, I said, actually, this is just how I was raised to be this way, because he kept just saying how, I can't believe that you even, all I did was offer a guy my seat. And he said, and I said, well, I follow the Bible, and it tells me that I'm to stand before the gray-headed and honor our elders, and so I take that very seriously. He said, oh, you follow the Bible? Anyway, this continued our conversation into the car rental agency while we were getting our cars, and even out in the parking lot afterwards. It turned out that this man, he was coming here to visit his daughter, he worked for the UN for years, decades, in the Middle East. And he seemed to be somewhat of a Christian guy. Even at some point, I said God, he said Jehovah. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe he's more. And I started talking to him and sharing with you, like I did about those headlines about Israel turning 70. And he was mentioning, and he was starting to give about the Palestinians and giving a little bit of their narrative. And I know all the narratives. But he ended up saying to me, I said, look, I lived in Israel, and I told him a little bit, I almost got killed in a bombing and all this stuff. And I was there when the Intifada was going on, and I was like filling in these things, and I was saying, I understand their narrative, but they're trying, they don't want peace. And we can say that both sides are equal, but we're not. But I just stayed in what I knew, and I stayed very calm, and I stayed very respectful. And at the end, he said to me, even though he knew I was an Israeli American who was religious, who was somewhat hardline, he still said to me, he said, the world needs more people like you, who actually will listen to other people's side, have compassion, and really want to make a difference in this world. Paraphrasing what he said. Because I offered a man a seat for 5 minutes on a bus, because the Torah commands me to honor elders, a stranger. It opened up an opportunity. He has my card. I believe he's going to follow up with me. He was very, very impressed. And what was I doing? I was being a kingdom ambassador. That's all I was being. I need to represent the kingdom, not Chaim, not Chaim's family. I need to represent the kingdom everywhere I go. And the kingdom tells me, if an old man needs a seat, give me your seat. It's not literally, but that's what it means. And so just by applying Torah, I've heard it said, the hardest part about keeping Torah is working it into every conversation. I'll let that sink in and let you get that. We feel we have this need to talk and tell other people that they should keep Torah. How about we just live it and let our light so shine that people go, who are you? Who do you represent? Nobody else on this planet acts like you. Why? Now I have someone's attention. Now I can witness to them. Now I can affect their life. By just being the person that Chaim was called to be. No more and no less. And not fearing the stranger. Loving the stranger. I'm going to finish up, because actually, part of what I'm doing here is part of speaking tomorrow for Shavuot and being invited by this, I want to call it the Union of Associated South Colorado Messianic Congregations, but it's not. It's an informal group. Is I'm having in a little over an hour leaders of Messianic and Hebrew Roots congregations over to where I'm staying in order to talk to them personally and to challenge them personally, because their heart is to serve, and yet, you know, the Messianic community is I think has maybe more potential in Colorado than other places in the world, but it's got all the same illnesses, same sicknesses, same issues, and I'm able to bring clarity to it. I'm not the person to pastor, I don't call myself a pastor, but I do operate in the prophetic and the apostolic. And so the job of someone in the prophetic is to point the way and to notice when things are off and to steer and direct. But the pastors really need to be the people who are there on a daily basis working it out. And so I love working with leaders, I love talking with leaders and ministering to them and help them, because they're watching out for your souls. And they need to know where things are going. And for the most part, Messianic and Hebrew Roots is in a holding pattern. We've gone about as far as we could go, and we're entrenching into the things that we know to be true. And I will let you know, if it wasn't before, a few days ago, when Israel turned 70, that is a generation, and it ended. Something shifted. If you haven't felt it, show Yehovah to show it to you. Because a few days ago, a 70-year generation of Israel being a state ended. And that means something new is here already, and it's coming, and it's kingdom. It's kingdom. Everything's different. Everything you knew before, don't worry about it. He is changing people like this. Talk to people. Be bold. Be bold. Is he real? Is he real?
Yes.
Is this true?
Yes.
Then what do we have to apologize for? What are we, diseased? What are we? We're the answer. I don't know. I want to be sky is falling. Things are heating up in a big time. And if you listen to certain timelines in prophetic, where I think we're very close to a war. Okay, if Trump causes it, he's just a player. Okay, he's just a player in it. Yehovah is gonna see it through. But guess what? You know, we always say, don't worry, we win, right? We really need to know that. When this world is going crazy, who's going to have the peace? Who's going to have the answers? Who? Spirit-led believers, the children of God. The creation is waiting for the revealing of the children of God. That's us, if we step up. This world needs us, not to preach Jesus. Okay? And I'm sorry about that. We don't need to preach Jesus. We need to be him.
Amen.
In this world.
Amen.
We need to go out and not talk about him, not even knowing who he is, not having really any relationship, promising people that they'll be forgiven and atoned for and their life will be great, and we haven't even received it ourselves. You can't give away what you don't have. I stand up here and just give you what I am, warts and all, because that's all I got to give. That's my testimony. My up, my downs, and some people here have known me a long time. Okay? They've seen my life. Okay? I'm not all that, and yet I'm incredible. I am astounding in him. But here's the thing. There's no pride in it, because you know what? He made you astounding too. Absolutely. You ever wonder why there are all these superhero movies out? Like, have you wondered, why are there all these superhero movies out? The Father is allowing Hollywood to condition us to understand we're superheroes. Each one of us has been given a gift, many giftings. And these Marvel ones are great because they show the humanness of the superheroes. They're weak. They have their issues. They have their problems. And they don't necessarily get along with each other. But when they respect each other and go into battle and call on each other's unique powers and don't covet the other's powers but call on them, hey, help me out over here and I'll help you out over there. You know, Infinity War, I haven't seen it yet, don't tell me about it, but I mean, my goodness, they're setting us up! The Infinity War is coming, where all the superheroes are going to be all... That's us, folks. That's Hollywood. I'm telling you, it's us. And we need to, Yeshua with 12, with 12. Turned the world right side up. Some of you know there's a property that amazingly we got to stay in when we first came to Colorado Springs. I told the story, we had lost where we were going to stay. And through just amazing coincidences that always happen when we step into our calling, we ended up at this amazing house. Some of you have been there. And when I was there and we had our meeting with the conference that I did, I proclaimed to everybody there, I said, I have no idea how this is going to be our house, but I know this is going to be our house. And it's not going to be just our house. This is an embassy. This is a building that was created to be an embassy. And anybody that goes anywhere near it, you can see it. It's written all over it. And it's been in the hands of believers for years. And it's absolutely anointed. And this is a place where I know my family's called to, because I have 6 children. And we're going to stand in Colorado Springs as a kingdom embassy, maybe the first one ever. And I proclaim that, but I have no idea how we're going to get this, because it's an 8,400 square foot house on 2.5 acres. And, you know, we're just a ministry that travels around and, you know, how in the world, I don't know. And I walk through this house saying, Father, I know you're going to give this us, but I have no idea how. And then my mother-in-law passes away. And suddenly, when we're done handling this estate, there's going to be money that will enable us to do this, but we don't have it yet. And the people want to sell this house. But I'll tell you the short of it is that on Thursday, 2 days ago, we worked it out with them, because more than selling the house, and as you know, the market is going up like crazy here, and yet they promised it to us at a ministry price, which they didn't have to do. But to them, the fact that this passes over to believers is the most important thing. And they know that it's going to take us time for this to do, and they worked out terms with us to wait on it.
Hallelujah.
And so, and it's the only deal, because we couldn't get a mortgage. You can have a lot of money, but if you don't have income, you don't have credit, you don't have, I mean, because of our lifestyle, we just haven't built any of those things. And the only way that we could get this house is through this one way, and it's exactly what's happening, because that's the Father. And people know, I wasn't shy. I proclaimed it. I said, this is crazy, I know. But I know this is going to come to pass, and we got confirmation it's coming to pass. And that is the way, and I'm not all this, it's what the Father has for me now, and I knew it. And my wife kept saying, hey, don't tell the children this is going to be our house, they're going to be disappointed. I said, I don't know what to tell you. I believe he told me that this is our house. And I kept walking around going, Father, there's no way, I have no way, this has to be you, and when you do this, I'm going to stand up and give your testimony, because that's what I do. I say, give me good stories, and I'll tell them. And he knows I tell stories well, and that I'll tell them, and I promised him, give me the house, and I'll proclaim it. And look, you know, I'm doing it, because I want more, and I want him to trust me, and I want to keep going. And guess what? The rules apply to you, too.
Yes.
This is a kingdom, it's a government. I don't operate under any special set of rules that you don't have access to as the same status in the kingdom as I have.
Amen.
I just maybe get more because I've practiced it longer. And he's challenging me more. But you know what? He wakes me up and challenges me with the next thing. He never lets me go. And there are many here that have, I'm sure in areas, have well surpassed areas of my life. And you could help disciple me. Because I just know what I know. But I know I'm not all that. It's only in him. So tomorrow I'm going to be teaching. I've been praying against the rain and for a nice sunny day tomorrow, because it was supposed to like thunderstorm all day. And I've been doing that for days, and the weather, at least those who tell us what the weather is going to be are starting to agree with this proclamation. So please, we want people to come out tomorrow, because even if it's cloudy, not as many people will come. And I have a word that is very much associated with this, but it's really to give out more to the masses of those in the congregations. But it continues this challenge on how the Messianic movement, the Hebrew roots movement, can know what we're supposed to do now. What now? What now? Because if we think we're all that, guess whose names are going to be written up on this board. Messianic Judaism, Hebrew roots, right? Because we thought we were all that, and we got a revelation, and then we turned it into an idol. And the Spirit moved, and we didn't. But, what if we took all the things that they got right, and we left all the rest behind, and we moved it forward? And then we took what they got right, and we moved it forward. And we aren't this Baptist, Methodist, Seventh-day. We had none of the titles. Denominations mean breaking up into little pieces. None of the titles. We just say, hey, what'd you get? What'd your generation get? I want that. Let's add it. Let's add it. Let's add it. Let's add it. And you know what Hebrew roots brought? You know what Hebrew roots brought? What did we bring? What did we bring? Torah. But Messianic Judaism was somewhat of a Torah movement. But there's something about Torah. We need to know. What did our movement, if we think we're all that, what did we bring to the table? What was the revelation given to us?
It's for the Gentiles
Well,
as well.
but that's been there. Radical obedience. Radical obedience. I have people that don't attend their own child's wedding because it's on Shabbat. Stupid radical obedience, but radical obedience nonetheless. Okay? Radical obedience nonetheless. He found people who are willing to leave husband, wife, mother, father, child to serve him. He found that in us. The thing is, we're being stupid with it. And we're judging other people with it. And we're insulting the giants on whose shoulders. Like without the Seventh-day Adventists, how much do you think that Sabbath, would have been acceptable within Christianity? Even a little bit. They broke ground. So we're just going to go to the dust pile, and the next movement will just turn around and go, oh, look at them. Look how I was in a Hebrew roots congregation, but let me tell you what they're really like. Let me tell you what they're really like. We're just going to go on the dust pile, folks, because there was never meant to be these. It's called the body of Messiah. And in every generation, he's been peeling back the onion. In every generation, and he's been showing us great works, and instead of saying, wow, and then the next time he does it, wow, and then another, wow, come on everybody, wow. We go, I'm all that. And the next person who gets a revelation, we go, oh, you're a false prophet. We got the final one. Are you getting this? Do you see this? Let's be looking at ourselves and looking at the now, because we can't affect any of this. But what can we affect? Ourselves now. It's the only point of impact that we have on the planet. Why don't we just put all our attention on that and see what we can do in this generation? Get rid of these denominations. And if you haven't watched Upper Room Conspiracy, please do, because that revelation from 15 years ago started me on the path to what I'm teaching you today. This was time of peeling back my own onion over and over again to do that. So please come out tomorrow, tell others, even if it might seem a little stormy. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. It's going to be beautiful. And come out, because I'm going to challenge a bigger group in the community. It's going to be a somewhat different teaching, but this is what I teach now. His kingdom is coming. The time is now. We can't be passive. We need to be bold. And what that looks like for you, I don't care. I'm a prophet. I'm not a pastor. I don't care. How you get there, unless you happen to be one of the few people that I actually get to hang out with and disciple, I don't care. Because I'm not running the universe. I was just sent here to give you a message. That's it. I'm done. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to pay it forward? And it's not solving every problem in the world. It's just picking up your mantle, the one that's been assigned to you, and walking with it in this generation, so that you would honor him, bring others into the kingdom, and be called good and faithful servant. And that's it. I hope that you found this simple. I hope that you found it understandable. I unfortunately need to go really soon because I have a bunch of people coming over to the embassy. And I want you to keep calling it that. It is called the embassy. I started calling it that, and people were laughing at me, including the owners. And I kept saying it's the embassy, and you know what they started doing? Calling it the embassy too. Because when you have a vision, state it boldly, and have the faith that when it comes to pass, people will listen. You have that spirit inside you that was given to us as a body, and you have the benefit of that spirit. Find out why he called you. Find out why he put you on this planet, and walk in it, and his kingdom come, and his will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Hallelujah.
One thing, the people he's talking about, they actually used to call a house that they bought and had built in California an embassy.
Yeah. When I said that,
And she went out to, I mean, she's the one that bought it, signed up and built it, because he was stuck in Israel at the time, so.
It's an amazing story.
You know, and there's so much more. I mean, you ask me sometime how we even met them. You know, the embassy is about 500 yards from my house, just up the hill. And, you know, Chaim, you know, I was introduced to Chaim through a couple that are here, and when we talked, I discovered he would fill in things that I couldn't put it's like, how do I want to say that? And he would already be saying it. Or I'd say something, he'd say, oh yeah, that's a better way to do it. You know, it's like I told him yesterday, I had someone tell me, St. Augustine said, you know, the church is a prostitute, but she's my mom. You know, think about that. I mean, that's a great way of getting the point across. You know, Chaim, you know, we were talking and I said, you know, there's a revival coming here. This town is set for a revival.
You told me that before I taught here the first time.
You know, and we talked on the phone. I said, I just know there's something coming there, but it needs this, what he and I are talking about. I've been calling it the sanctification process. He calls it the kingdom. But we were talking about the same thing. And he, out of the blue, says, hey, we're going to move here. We're going to come and be part of this. You know, we're going to do that. And ever since he's done that, other things just keep opening up. I mean, pastors, you know, people that I've gotten to meet that are being put in place for us to be able to use them to go out and reach out. People who are connected with James Dobson, people that are connected with Compassion International, people who are connected with all kinds of organizations I've gotten to meet in the last few weeks. So we're going to hit the ground running with this.
But this is everybody. The table's set. I'm saying this. The table, if you don't feel it, should have him reveal it to you. This is different. The table is set, but you need to be bold. And when you show up, you'll find out he was already there. And the whole thing is a laydown. But if you don't show up, it doesn't happen.
You know,
And that's our partnership with him.
and the way, you know, I don't know if you know where we call it Messiah's Way Fellowship, because 20 years ago we set up a foundation called Messiah's Way to take care of the widow, needy, and orphans. And we did it because my wife and I decided we'll support it and let all the monies that come into it just do the right works. And when it came time to do a fellowship from scratch, one that isn't connected to anything, doesn't have any kind of history like we decided to do a year ago, it's like it made sense to call it Messiah's Way. Take care of the widow, needies, and orphans. You know, that's the kingdom walk. So when anybody gives anything to our tithe box, it is never paid for a dime of the rent here. Everything in the tithe box right now is to take care of the widow, needy, and orphans. And I didn't know what he was going to talk about today. I'd already set up that I was going to.
I didn't know what it was.
We intentionally don't even discuss that. But what I was going to bring up is you know, I get the phone calls when people call in need. It's one of the hard parts about being the so-called pastor, and I will tell you, every pastor will tell you this, because the needs never stop. One of the big needs right now is there's a lot of people who, for whatever reason, have no place to go. Yeah, so one of the things I was going to encourage is if you've got a house where you've got a room, we're not talking about just taking them in. We're talking about renting them a room for a while, letting them be around somebody who can be an influence. If we need to help out as a congregation, pay the rent, then that's fine. But that's the kind of stuff that's really needed right now. I have at least 2 people I know, and we've had many others that have come through our congregation that are one step away from that happening to them. And we're just wanting to be able to step up and take care of them. Be part of the kingdom. Be part of the solution. So if you want to be involved and help and get involved and do something, you know, the song, you know, it's kind of a stupid song, but the words get to me. You know, if not you, who? If not us, who? If not now, when? So I encourage that. And when Chaim and his family get back here, you know, you can be part of it or not, but we're going to do this. We're going to change this city. We're going to have an impact. We're going to be the kingdom. We're going to do it from someplace like here.
And don't wait for me to get back.
Yeah, well, I'm not, you know,
Everybody. I'm saying
I'm one of
everybody.
these,
I'm just one of the
I
players.
thought he was crazy and what he kept
I am.
saying,
I am
but,
crazy.
but I've never stood in the way of this happening, and it just keeps happening. You know, and he says, oh, you're anointed for this relationship that no, I was just, I maintain a friendship with these Christians, and they're making this possible. And there's a lot of them out there that want what we have.
Yeah. If we bring it with love and compassion like Yeshua does, the people need it. People get this. Oh, and I'll add this. What we bring is we unlock all the other things. All of these things have been broken into separate denominations. With a Hebraic mindset, Torah brought to this, it can unlock and bring together this beautiful puzzle all together. We aren't all that, but I do believe that we're the final revelation before moving to kingdom, the Hebrew roots movement. Radical obedience. People who will go in, but we got to go in love. The kingdom is righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit, not self-righteousness and judgment. Okay, and that the world will know that we're his disciples because of our love for each other, not because of our spot-on doctrine or when we keep the feast or whatever. We need to stand in this righteousness, but through love and compassion. And we do that. We offer a man a seat on a bus. It can be that simple.
But like you said, there were 12, and look at the impact they had. We got 30 or 40 here just today.
And a very Christian city.
Yeah.
They're open.
It's there to be done. So please, if you're not doing something like this, get involved. Talk to us about what you want to do. Talk to us about how you can help us. Or just come and say, how can I help?
And we want to find out how we can help you. How do we activate you into your calling?
Okay.
How can we activate you into your vision?
But we need to release Chaim. I'll go ahead and close this. I realize I had talked to a couple of you about doing prayers. We'll do that next week. Because Chaim has 25, 30 people coming in. He's doing
Yeah, I got to leave right now,
He's
but
doing all the
I will
cooking.
be at the park tomorrow, and I will have time for talking and fellowship then.
And he'll be living with us in a few months
Yeah.
anyhow. So, and every month he comes back, so he'll do this. So, Abba Father, I want to just take this opportunity to lay a hand of blessing on Chaim and his family, on his ministry, on the work of the kingdom that you're having him do, and not only on him, but any of us that are stepping alongside with him and saying, we want to be part of the kingdom. We want to be examples to the world. We want to change this city, and through this city, we want to change this universe. So please continue to give us those opportunities. Please continue to add to our numbers, and please continue to strengthen us as we step out to do that. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Hey Jeff, I want two things from him. I was wanting to be able to go to his website and listen to some things. And also his chiropractor.
Carpets at a house.
All you have to do is just say,
No, no, it was